This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
I want to welcome you to a special episode of Real Talk. We're grateful that you're here on this January the 20th, the president-elect, as we're speaking, but by the time many of you listen to this or see this, he will be once again the president of the United States, Donald Trump, following an inauguration ceremony in Washington, D.C., one that's been moved indoors, by the way. They say the threat of dangerously low temperatures prompted the move. We'll see if one of our guests today concurs with that. He's a Canadian, and I'm not so sure that he'll feel the temperatures are dangerously low. Wyatt Sharpe's going to join us in just a quick second. Of course, the remarkable and always impressive teenaged host of the Wyatt Sharpe Show, no surprise, is down in D.C. for the inauguration. He's going to give us a report on the ground, what he's seeing there in just a moment. About a half an hour from now, we're going to talk to the publisher, the founder of Western Standard, Derek Fildebrandt, a former MLA out of the province of Alberta, certainly himself a controversial figure. Well, his outlet was in the spotlight as his correspondent, a fellow by the name of James Snell, was booted by police out of Mark Carney's campaign launch, the Liberal leadership bid, officially launching in Edmonton last week, and you probably saw the kerfuffle. We talked about it on the show. We're going to get Derek's take on that and a million other things, including the impact that he's expecting to see from the Trump presidency on Canada. I probably don't have to tell you that Alberta's premier, Danielle Smith, is down in D.C. for the inauguration and has been posting from her social media accounts over the weekend all of the meetings and the encounters that she's having with prominent conservative, that is Republican American politicos. There's a lot of ground to cover. We'll be taking a look at our Real Talk live chat today. We'll be getting into the emails, including an amazing one from Brittany, who has submitted a positive reflection. It's a frigid, dangerous, cold weather edition of Positive Reflections presented by Kuby Renewable Energy. That's going to go down before the show wraps. Before we get to Wyatt Sharpe in just 30 seconds, first I want to let you know that Business Career College, well, they're the ones that are making this show possible, and they've got a message specifically for those of you that will be watching markets today. What will be the impact of Trump swearing in on the markets? I mean, a lot of people are talking about crypto right now. There's a whole storyline there. If you're a financial advisor, a senior finance professional, and you have clients that are asking you about decentralized finance, they're seeing it in the news all the time, and they're looking to you for informed advice, you're going to want to make sure you're schooled up. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Business Career College has been in the business of financial training since 1997, and they've just launched a new designation. That's the CDAA, the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation. If you're providing financial planning, accounting, legal, or estate services, you've got to stay knowledgeable about cryptocurrency. You can learn more about this designation at businesscareercollege.com. When you're ready to invest in it, remember the promo code Ryan20, all one word, Ryan20, will knock 20% off your investment in the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation at businesscareercollege.com. Well, this fellow's got a busy day ahead of him, along with thousands of others down in, of course, Washington, D.C., as the 47th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, will be inaugurated at about noon local time. Wyatt Sharpe is the founder and host of the Wyatt Sharpe Show and has always been a wonderful friend of this show. It's a pleasure to catch up with him now live in Washington, D.C. Wyatt, what are you seeing down there in the nation's capital? What's happening in D.C. as we speak?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly very chaotic. I was going to go to the White House and then I had a little something pop up, so I'm going to head there after this. But Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they just kind of greeted each other out front of the White House, and you saw that happen. And then they're going to be heading to the Capitol. You have a lot of people who are already at the Capitol that were people who were invited by Donald Trump, people like Vivek Ramaswamy, some of his former opponents, his family, and then a lot of course, his just closest advisors and friends who are also there in attendance. And I think it's in particular interesting just not to lose sight of what this means for Canada. And you certainly have a lot of Canadian officials, as you mentioned, like Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who is here attending because of that 25% tariff threat. And we're learning from the Wall Street Journal that the tariffs will not be one of the executive orders that he will be drafting today. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, though. Of course, he still is signaling that he's pretty serious about it. But the other executive orders are likely to be focused more on things like immigration. We're learning he could draft between 100 to 200 executive orders, and about 10 of those are going to be related to immigration and border security alone. And then, of course, there's going to be a number of other ones that are going to be taking shape as well. One of them is he's going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and that's something he has the authority to do through an executive order. And I think a lot of people here, even just jokingly, have been making comments about Canada becoming the 51st state, which is, of course, impossible, or at least very unlikely. But, he still seems as if he's pretty, even if it's jokingly, serious about that happening.
Yeah, I like how you say it's impossible, and then you go, well, very unlikely. It's extremely unlikely, but it kind of feels like with Donald Trump, you don't rule anything out because he's wired a little bit different than anybody that's ever held that office or for that matter, any office with comparable power in human history. Before we go any further, Wyatt, you're a born and raised Canadian. You've seen your fair share of frigid winters. We're hearing that this inauguration ceremony moved indoors because the temperatures are, quote, dangerously low. We're seeing reports that they're basically temperatures that wouldn't shut down a kindergarten field trip anywhere across the country that you call home. What's your personal experience down there? What does the temperature look like in Celsius, and what do you think is actually going on?
Yeah, I don't know the exact temperature right now. I do know that I personally don't think it's because of the weather. I think even right now they're holding a watch party for their supporters at the Capital One Arena here in Washington. And if they were really concerned about the weather, they wouldn't make their supporters wait in a general admission lineup outside that goes on for blocks and blocks and blocks. So in essence, their supporters are doing the same thing at the Capital One Arena that they would have been doing outside if they were standing in the National Mall for the inauguration. There's kind of a general behind the scenes consensus that maybe it was something to do with a security threat and that's not been confirmed by any means, but it's not really any colder here than it would be like as kind of a typical standard Canadian morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at my, you're there, I'm not, but the report on my laptop is telling me that it's currently -3 degrees Celsius, so barely cold enough to make an ice cube in Washington D.C. right now. You think it was a concern over crowd sizes? This is what Trump's critics, of course, are chuckling about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. Like, if you look at the photos from his last inauguration, where they compare it to the size of Barack Obama's inauguration, he had his press secretary back when he first came out in 2017, Sean Spicer, go out and quite literally just lie about the crowd sizes that were out on the National Mall. So, I mean, he certainly is a fan of big crowd sizes. I don't know if he would have necessarily moved the whole ceremony around because of that, because I think he knows that regardless of the people on TV aren't going to talk about the crowd sizes as much as he thinks they are. They're mostly going to talk about, things related to, you can see there. They're mostly going to talk about the policy and some of the substance, but that's certainly on his mind, I think. And the crowd sizes are something that are personally important to him. So I wouldn't rule it out as something that kind of influenced what happened.
Yeah, Justin's watching us right now live on YouTube in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. He says the Gulf of America kind of reeks of freedom fries to me. I know that it's obviously rubbing Mexico the wrong way, and you wonder if it's just kind of a troll. I just think that folks aren't necessarily used to seeing the individual holding the most powerful office on planet Earth trolling, but it seems to all be part of kind of a bigger methodology or like a bigger strategy. Folks brace for the Trump inauguration differently than others, including here in Canada. I'm interested to see you say that it's not expected that the earliest moves from the president, could be 100 of them, but will not include tariffs to Canada. You've been down there for a short while now, talking to people. Is that part of the conversation that people are having? Are these 25% tariffs, the threatened tariffs, something that are on Americans' radar right now?
Well, I was talking to a pro-Trump Republican congressman who said that he himself doesn't even think the tariffs are a good idea, solely just because of kind of the nature of how he would plan to go about some of these tariffs. And I would just say that I think right now a lot of people in particular are looking at the tariffs and they're thinking they're expecting a retaliatory list to be put in place regardless. So they know that whatever impact they're expecting it to have would be mitigated by whatever candidate decides to kind of put back on it.
So what's jumping out at you is you're obviously you approach your reporting and your correspondence a little bit differently than many of the people you're rubbing shoulders with, just based on the fact that you've not yet turned 20. Obviously, you see politics a little bit different. You may have different concerns on your radar. What are you noticing in particular, or what's front of mind for you today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm to be honest, the sure just fact that people had months and months and months to prepare. Like, I'm always interested in the behind the scenes of it, because people see all the pomp and the circumstance on TV, and then that's all they see, but they don't understand kind of what goes into it. And I'm just most surprised by the fact that they had months and months and months to prepare for this, and then everything starts falling apart within the last few days. And so we even got an email as press who were credentialed to cover the inauguration, who had stand-ups on the National Mall that they could use when Trump was being sworn in. Many of the networks who paid for those stand-ups, who then were being told, sorry, those stand-ups are now persona non grata, basically.
Right.
And so then now media at the last minute were kind of scrambling to find another place to do it. And the inauguration, they were credentialing a limited number of people. But I also just feel bad for the 250,000, and I posted this on Twitter, confirmed ticket holders who were coming. This was probably one of the biggest things that they've been looking forward to. This is someone who they've been supporting for a long time. They spent, in many cases, thousands of dollars. 90% of hotels in DC were booked up. If you were to look up DC hotels in the area last week, it was hard to find one for less than $700 a night. And then all of these people's money are basically just going to waste. They're not going to get refunds of any kind, obviously. So I'm interested in that. But if you're looking at it from kind of the traditional inauguration standpoint, I think, it's playing out in just a very unusual, different way than many people would expect. The last time the inauguration was not held kind of in that traditional National Mall setting was in 1985, and that was for Ronald Reagan. And that time it was actually because of the cold.
Huh. Yeah, here's your tweet. You say, call me crazy for asking this. If they're really moving the inauguration indoors, what happens to the 250,000 confirmed ticket holders who each likely spent thousands on accommodations to come to the D.C. area? When I think of thousands of people that came to the D.C. area most recently for Donald Trump, I think of obviously January 6th and that assault on the Capitol. And it's widely expected that the incoming president could pardon many of the people convicted relating to their involvement in that. But the outgoing president, 46, Joe Biden, has actually been issuing some pardons and as some of his last orders of business to try to get ahead of what some people fear may be vindictive or vengeful action by President Trump. What jumps out at you about that story?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Donald Trump has been talking about January 6th for quite some time, even after it happened, which for me, if I was responsible for that, I would want to try and hide that as much as possible, but he doesn't really seem to feel a lot of shame with respect to it. But so, yeah, I mean, I think we are certainly expecting that. I think not all of them are going to be pardoned. We saw something recently, and I don't know for sure what it was, but it was something along the lines of the violent January 6th protesters are going to not be pardoned, whereas the other ones will be, which is ironic because I think the ones who were charged with crimes were the ones who were violent. So I don't know how they're going to work that out. But yeah, anyway, so I think just with respect to that, Donald Trump certainly has a long history of putting people in place that he knows will be beneficial to him. And you're certainly seeing that with his cabinet picks right now. In the last administration, there was at least selective people who would stand up to what he was saying. Whereas this time it's, Tulsi Gabbard, it's Marco Rubio, it's Pete Hegseth, it's RFK, all people who have been extremely, extremely loyal to Donald Trump and likely won't come out and say too much negative stuff about him.
So Wyatt, but before we let you go, and I know you got to go soon here, you've got an absolute busy day. Give us a bit of a peek behind the curtain. Where are you now? Where do you go from here? What do your next few hours look like? I know people would be very interested to hear.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out myself, to be totally honest, because so I'm at just a studio that I've been using to do some of my interviews over the course of the weekend here. And then I'm going to head to the White House after this, and then I'll probably go to Congress and to the Capitol to just interview some members of Congress who were actually there, who were witnessing the swearing-in ceremony in the Capitol Rotunda. And then we'll see where that leads us to. And then I might do some more interviews tonight, and then heading out first thing tomorrow. I was going to try and maybe leave tonight just because to mitigate kind of the disaster that the DC airport will probably be tomorrow. I'm going to have to just weather the storm, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. Johnny was just showing us the new profile photo that you've just posted. This, people can follow you on Instagram at _Wyatt Sharpe. They can follow you on X at Wyatt Sharpe 8. There you are on the South Lawn, standing right by Marine One. That must have been a heck of a thing for someone like you to experience.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I was actually just getting ready to leave. So like members of the press get like emails basically detailing, like similar to Canadian media as well, what the schedule for the president is going to be. And sometimes it'll be like open press, Marine One departure, or Marine One arrival, or whatever the case is. And so I got that, but I kind of like had forgotten about it. And then I was getting ready to leave. And another news correspondent said to me like, oh, come with me to the South Lawn and see the departure. And so I got there, and then of course as the helicopter's taking off, it's very windy, and so like all the press are like moving around because it's like literally so windy. And so then you go from that, and then the president comes out. Jill Biden was there, Hunter Biden was there, and his wife was there as well. And so, yeah, it was certainly an interesting experience.
Wyatt Sharpe is the host of the Wyatt Sharpe Show. They're closing in on 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Let's get him there, Real Talkers. You can also follow him on social. Wyatt, we always enjoy connecting with you. And can I say, just as a friend and a colleague, we're proud of what you're doing down there. Really take in this day, enjoy it, and we'll look forward to seeing what your reporting looks like.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it. That's Wyatt Sharpe, good friend of this show, joining us live from Washington, D.C. on Inauguration Day. Pretty wild stuff happening ahead of time. I mean, I know I see Super Chat Ken here in our live chat powered by Park Power. He says, how about this new grift? He says the incoming president, Donald Trump, and his wife, Melania, launching, he says Bitcoins, not Bitcoins, but meme coins on the weekend. He says to launder international support fund bribes, billions of dollars paid. I'll reference the reporting here at theguardian.com. You can see this, the incoming U.S. First Lady. This is where, like, I don't know, American politics, just like, to state the obvious, strikes me as different than anywhere else. Can you imagine the spouse or partner of a Canadian prime minister launching a cryptocurrency meme coin as they're about to move in? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. But Melania Trump following her husband's lead by launching a multi-billion-dollar cryptocurrency meme coin amid a rally in digital currencies as Trump prepares to return to the White House. And it is true, if you've been watching, Bitcoin has been rallying big time over the last few days. But this new token, people always talk about how you shouldn't be able to use the office of the president, the office of the prime minister, the office of the chancellor for profit. You shouldn't be able to use the office of the premier for your own personal profit. Well, the value of these tokens have tripled, giving it a total value of over $14 billion shortly after its launch just a few days ago. It was on Friday. We're talking to you on a Monday morning right now. But the launch of this coin pared back those gains as investors piled into her rival coin. They got these rival cryptocurrencies going on. I am not an expert. Johnny, we've been telling Real Talkers since the very beginning, don't ever take financial advice from me. Don't ever plan your financial future based on what I say, but just for whatever reason, some of these things, whether it's Dogecoin or some of these cryptocurrencies that pop up and become popular with people, it strikes me just anecdotally. I'm just speaking as a civilian here, not an expert. It strikes me as though somebody always gets hosed on these ones, and so this one, I despite the fact that cryptocurrencies have made significant gains since Trump's election victory in November, he's obviously signaled plans to deregulate the sector, which is kind of the whole ethos around it. But Bitcoin reaching a fresh record high as we're talking to you on this Monday morning right now, around 109,000 US and change, up by about 5%. But Dogecoin, which is the one that Elon Musk has obviously been bullish on for a long time, talks about it as the people's crypto, has gained about 5%. Ethereum up about 3.5%. For a lot of you, you're going to be sitting here going, this is like Greek to me. I don't understand any of this. And if that's your comfort level, then so be it. But these ones launched by Melania, the ones touted by Trump, to me, that strikes me as red flags all over the place. We're going to be talking to Derek Fildebrandt in about 5 minutes. He's the founder of Western Standard, obviously a conservative media outlet, and I'm curious for his take on the inauguration of Donald Trump, what it'll mean for Canada, what it'll mean for the province of Alberta. A federal politician, certainly not a conservative, but Charlie Angus, he's on his way out. kind of a rock and roll vibe, this guy, a lover of music. He's always shot straight. He's always said what he thinks. And he had scathing words for Donald Trump just the other day. This is making news stateside as the NDP member of parliament basically said exactly what he thought about Donald Trump. Check this out. Remarkable stuff.
A human being. I'm sorry, you may have gotten the presidency, but you're a disgrace. You're a convicted felon. You're a pervert. You treat your allies with absolute disdain while you kiss up to Putin. Here's the thing. We are your best neighbor. We are your best ally. We are your number one trading partner, but we won't break Donald because you think your grifter politics can push us around. And we will continue to defend the international world order. We will continue to work with NATO. We will continue to work with Ukraine. So, Donald, I know this is a big diversion exercise for you to change the channels in the United States, but you're going to have to explain to the American people very quickly why you brought in so many grifters and crooks with you. The American people aren't going to put up with it, and the Canadian people, we will never put up with it. Anytime, Donald, anywhere, we will take you on.
That's courtesy of Midas Touch. That's MP Charlie Angus saying exactly what he thinks. Grifter, this is not the first time I've heard that word. Pretty interesting to hear a member of parliament referring to the incoming president of the United States as a pervert. Whether or not it fits, I guess you can probably look to the kind of the trend you see when politicians are leaving office. Like Mr. Angus, they're not seeking re-election, although that may play well with his base regardless. But Charlie Angus getting everybody's attention with his assessment of Donald Trump. Let us know what you think about what you're hearing right now. We'll be looking to our live chat throughout this episode. And of course, if you're catching this later, like most folks will, you can always send us an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Derek Fildebrandt coming up in 2 minutes or less. Right now, opera lovers, music lovers, arts lovers, I want to let you know that Edmonton Opera coming up on the 1st, 4th, 6th, and 7th of February, presenting a profoundly moving production of Bluebeard's Castle, where love takes center stage. Originating from the Theatre of Sound in London, this contemporary production tells a love story that's overshadowed by dementia. Each door that Judith opens is a step into her past, exploring her memories, her identity. You can experience the power of love and memory in Bluebeard's Castle. Directed by Daisy Evans with a new English libretto and music arranged by Stephen Higgins, a story that will resonate deeply with anyone touched by memory loss. Don't miss Bluebeard's Castle, again, February 1st, 4th, 6th, and 7th at the beautiful Jubilee Auditorium. You can get your tickets today at edmontonopera.com. For those of you who in 2025 have made a promise to yourself to get ready for the job market, you've promised yourself that new opportunities will abound. Maybe you're fascinated with a new career field. Maybe there's some research you've always been interested in doing. Maybe you're just this close to completing your undergrad, or you're dreaming of going to get that MBA. Whatever your plan is, Athabasca University has world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. That's the beauty of Athabasca University. Your only commute is to your device. It's your education, your way. You can read more about their open admissions process, their flexible scheduling, some of the financial awards and personalized study options that are available by spending a couple of minutes today on their website. That's athabascau.ca. If it's maybe not school, but maybe decluttering, maybe getting organized that you've vowed to yourself, you've promised that to yourself this year, I want to direct you to California Closets, the best in the business. They'll make the most of your space with custom organizational systems, and they can work with any budget. The coolest part about this is it's risk-free to sit down with their designers, request that free consultation, paint a picture of what your vision is, talk to them about your budget, and then let them go to work. Their designers, I guarantee, will blow your mind. I've been in one of those consultations myself, and it resulted in an installation we're still thrilled with almost 10 years later. And they worked with our budget, too. It wasn't a huge one. You can request that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. And I want you to circle on your calendar the 1st of February. I know it feels like it's a ways away, but it's coming up about a week and a half from now. Friesen Brothers for the longest time, have been making groceries and family mealtime more affordable the first of every month at all 16 of their locations. They knock 15% off grocery purchases of $75 or more. Plus, each location of Freeland Brothers offers their seniors discount days. Check out their special caramelized onion and brie pizza on special this month only at Freeland Brothers. Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Derek Fildebrandt, formerly an elected official in the province of Alberta, member of the Legislative Assembly, and now making a go of it in independent media. He's the founder and publisher of Western Standard. It's been a while since we've had him on the show, and it's always a pleasure to welcome him back. It's nice to see your face, man. How you been holding up?
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, good stuff. I see the Libranos art over your shoulder. This is for conservatives, for Republicans. This is obviously a big day as Donald Trump prepares to take back the Oval Office, so to speak. Where's your head at on Inauguration Day?
I mean, if nothing else, you have to appreciate, in general, the showmanship of American politics, and very specifically the showmanship of Donald Trump. I was sitting on the couch last night with my family, and then I checked X, and I see Donald Trump appearing on the stage with the Village People, performing YMCA. I actually saw the Village People at the Strathmore Gay Rodeo a number of years ago, back when that was a thing, and I was shocked that the Village People were still around. It really is actually only just the main singer plus some other guys in costumes, but the showmanship of it is quite something. The energy around his return to office is unlike anything I've seen before. I mean, if whatever else is going on, it's a vibe shift, if to use the common parlance.
Yeah, to say the very least. So it's expected, and obviously we'll find out in several hours. The Trump administration, perhaps up to 100 or even more executive orders. Among them, reports Wyatt Sharpe, what a remarkable young correspondent we had on the show just ahead of you, will not be tariffs imposed on Canadian goods and services, but obviously the threat of these tariffs, up to 25%, has sort of sent shockwaves across the country as elected officials, as business people, importers and exporters have wondered about the impact of that. What are you expecting to see with this Canada-U.S. relationship with Trump returning into office?
Well, I think the report coming that this is just going to be Trump ordering, his executive order is just to have his trade officials look at which where to put tariffs and how to go about it. That's a big step back from everything we've been led to believe until just hours ago. So that's a good sign that perhaps, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but perhaps a cooler head's prevailing. I mean, simply, to some of us people, it might sound nice just to slap a 25% tariff on everything coming from Canada. But I mean, even if you are a believer in protectionism and tariffs and things like that, it would have serious detrimental effects on the ability of American industry to do its jobs. Even if they want to increase American aluminum production or auto productions on their own, doing this overnight would be absolutely devastating to some of the industries that President Trump says he wants to help. He reiterated his promise at his rally last night, just before he went on with Village People, that he was going to cut energy costs in half for Americans. You don't do that by putting a tariff on Alberta oil. We're still in a trade war. The trade war is, I wouldn't say coming. We're in the trade war now. But perhaps he's going to be a bit more targeted in where those tariffs go, which I think makes the so-called Team Canada approach to retaliation all the more complicated, because that means it's more likely that certain industries are going to be hit than others. And again, raises the bigger question: is Alberta going to be used as the economic human body shield to protect the primary industries in Ontario and Quebec?
Yeah, interesting to see your former political colleague, Danielle Smith. People can check out her Instagram account at AB Danielle Smith. Down in D.C., obviously, over the weekend, hobnobbing and rubbing shoulders with Republican power players. She's been criticized widely across Canada, maybe not in Alberta, but across Canada this past week for kind of not standing with or not signing on with her fellow first ministers, with the fellow premiers in kind of a nationwide strategy to address these tariffs. She's been unapologetic about it. Obviously, saying that in her mind, a Canada First approach is the other provinces signing in to get more pipelines built out of Alberta. What do you think is an appropriate response for Alberta? What would you like to see as part of a nationwide strategy? And do you think that Canada is equipped to adequately fight a trade war with the United States?
Well, you know me, it's an uncomfortable thing for me to be agreeing with what a government does, conservative, New Democrat, or liberal. But I think she's actually struck a pretty good balance of things here. The problem is that historically, Canada's national interest really is just Ontario and Quebec's interest. Upper and Lower Canada, if we're going to use more historical terms. We're the hinterlands, we're the colonies. And yeah, we're a part of Canada, but we're just not as important. We don't have as many votes. We don't have, we're not ordained by God to be a part of the founding colonies that created Canada. So, there is more than enough historical precedent here that we should be extremely cautious of subjecting our interests to the interests of Ontario and Quebec. I don't wish ill against those places. I want them protected from a trade war that comes here. But, it's funny how quickly dirty Alberta tar sands became Canadian energy, and that Canadian energy needs to be used. Canada, for all the tough talk from guys like Charlie Angus, we're just too small. We like to thump our chests. We like to show a little machismo against the evil Americans. But the problem is we're not just, it's not like the difference between Germany and France. One's bigger than the other, but, they're both roughly kind of comparable. This is like Russia and Mongolia. Like we're just totally off balance in terms of the relationship here. And, so if Canada wants to hit back, simply imposing equal tariffs against American products is not going to do it. Ottawa knows, Ontario knows, Quebec knows that if they really want to hit the Americans, you need to use Alberta oil. That would throw American energy prices into chaos. It would severely hurt American industry. It would severely hurt American consumers. The problem is, it's not really in Alberta's interest to sacrifice our oil exports to prop up the government-subsidized industries like auto, aerospace, things like that in Ontario and Quebec. There really is no cohesive Team Canada approach right now because there is no cohesive Canada.
Yeah, and I think that you've hit on something. I think that's probably what's pissing a lot of people off across the country is that, I guess you can kind of use that phrase, a trump card. Like if you look at oil and gas, it is an extremely important export. It's not the only export, but like you said, it's one that gets a lot of attention. We get the attention of the White House. We get the attention of Jill and John Q. Public in the United States at the gas pumps for sure. But that's probably and obviously part of the reason why I think the other premiers, why the current prime minister sitting there saying we need to have that card to play. Like Alberta can't just go it alone and leave the rest of the country, right? Like it's a bigger statement that Alberta makes when we say at a time of, I don't know if you want to go so far as to call it a national unity crisis, but it's certainly a looming economic crisis. Alberta doesn't have the rest of the country's back, and you got to wonder if that's a tough look moving forward.
Well, I think it's a fair look because I don't think the rest of the country has necessarily had Alberta's back, with some exceptions. I mean, Saskatchewan has been a reliable ally of Alberta. BC comes and goes where it stands with us. But where was the premier of Quebec when we wanted to build Energy East? I mean, you simply can't turn off the taps right now because if you look at the map of the major pipeline infrastructure in North America, our oil goes through the United States before coming back into Eastern Canada. So where were other parts of the country when we wanted to simply, without government money, without subsidies, without any support from taxpayers, expand our ability to earn money for Alberta and Canadians. And so I don't think, I think there's a lot of Albertans who rightfully look at this and say, you haven't had our back. When we actually were asking nothing of you guys except the ability to just do more business. We weren't asking for your money. We weren't asking you to make sacrifices. We just wanted you to let us do our thing. And you haven't had our back. And so now we're supposed to be your economic human body shield here, or sorry, your economic human shields to stand in the way of this stuff. We're just not interested in playing the part. If we're going to take one for the team, you need to be should have been shown your willingness to take one for the team over the last decade and more. So I just don't think there, among a lot of Albertans like myself, I don't think there's a big appetite to take the hit for them.
On our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, Dwayne says, come on, Derek. He says, like, we're talking about, they're jumping back at your comment about government subsidized industries like auto you mentioned and aerospace. Dwayne says the oil industry in Alberta has been heavily subsidized by the government for decades. The Alberta PCs blew $35 million on a bitumen upgrader debacle. Super chat Ken says, Ken says, I'm all for responsible oil and gas development, but are we pretending that oil and gas isn't subsidized in Alberta? He says we literally charge low royalty rates until post payout status to build the business. I mean, there's also the obvious one of the federal government buying TMX, but how do you see these? How do you see those government investments or subsidies as different than the other ones?
Well, actually, no, he's got a good point on the upgrader there. That was an absolutely disastrous decision made by the Stelmach and Redford governments, and we're going to be paying for it as Albertans for generations to come. I think you may have had Ted Morton on before. He knows this probably better than anyone else. That was a disgusting case of corporate welfare, and we're going to be paying for it forever. But that wasn't subsidizing the overall industry. That was corporate welfare payments to a specific group. It's not going to really help the industry, and it's not going to help Albertans. That was just gross corporate welfare. I think TMX, well, that didn't require taxpayers' money if the federal government had not stood in our way. If the British Columbia government under the NDP and to a lesser extent Christy Clark's Liberals before that hadn't tried to do it, to block it, that didn't require any taxpayers' money. It only required taxpayers' money after governments tried to kill it. So I mean, they were just trying to save what they had already broken there. But no, the Alberta's oil industry is not broadly subsidized by government. You see money going into things like carbon capture and storage. That's not something that industry wants to do. It's something the government wants the industry to do. So if government wants the industry to do that thing, it's going to have to pay it to do it. I'm not that interested in that part of it. Business is not that interested in it insofar as that there's government money there. But carbon capture and storage is not the energy industry. That's a government-directed activity.
Let's transition to a story that relatively speaking, I felt like it flew under the radar last week. The Mark Carney campaign launch in Edmonton, and your correspondent, James Snell, who I'm not personally familiar with, you can tell us about him. But as I understand it, he's a credentialed correspondent that has access to the Alberta legislature and does reporting. It's maybe opinionated reporting, but reporting nonetheless for your outlet. That's Western Standard. People can check it out at westernstandard.news. My understanding is that Mr. Snell was there with some other conservative correspondents, and all of them, I'm sure, representing their own media outlets. The Counter Signal was there, as I understand it, and others. But what went down here? When did you know, or when did Mr. Snell know that he was going to be evicted by police from this campaign launch in Laurier?
So Mr. Snell has spent most of his career as a journalist, but he, I think he was also recently with the Winnipeg Sun. But he is a member in good standing of the Alberta Legislative Press Gallery, which is not determined by the Alberta legislature or government. It's determined by other journalists. The president of it is Michelle Bellefontaine of the BC. So it's hardly a hotbed of right-wing conservatives or anything. But he's a member in good standing of it with the Western Standard. He works full-time in the basement of the legislature in the office there. He had registered in advance with the Mark Carney campaign and been confirmed by the Mark Carney campaign, in fact, that he would have access to the event. He showed up, and Stephen Carter, the former campaign manager for Alison Redford, Danny Nenshi, Jody Gondek, and then their chief of staff, they blocked it. You can see the back of his shiny head there on the screen there, stopped him from coming in, along with George Chahal, that's interesting because just over the Christmas break, Mr. Snell, I think, did a story. I know the Western Standard, it may have been Mr. Snell, did a story that Mr. Chahal, I have to give a language warning here. Mr. Chahal's brother over the Christmas break demanded oral sex from Shuv Majumdar, a conservative MP. So Mr. Chahal was there quite forcefully stopping Mr. Snell from coming in. Perhaps he didn't like some of his reporting. But look, we have two main divisions at the Western Standard. We have a news division and an opinion division. The opinion division is highly opinionated. It's what you would expect. It's pretty conservative. It's pretty libertarian. But our news division is a pretty old-fashioned news division where most of our reporters are actually recruited from the legacy media as the legacy media dies. Most of them are from there, including Mr. Snell. And they do their job professionally. They take a very Western, very Alberta-centric view of the news, unlike most of the media that's all owned and operated out of the Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal triangle. But he was denied entry despite being a member of the Alberta Legislative Press Gallery, despite registering and being accepted in advance. And then some other independent conservative media were there as well.
Do you think that Snell's access was hurt by the company that he was with? Do you think that that Snell kind of paid the price for standing there next to Cian Bexte from the Counter Signal as an example?
I don't know. There was other media. I mean, they were all trying to come through there, so there was a Counter Signal, True North, maybe Rebel as well. I haven't confirmed Rebel, but I think Rebel may have been there.
I think Rebel had some involvement in that launch.
Pardon?
I think Rebel had some involvement in that launch. I don't know who I don't know exactly who is responsible. You were quite forceful. Derek, by the way, you and I have known each other for 15 years. What the hell are you doing threatening to sue me on Twitter over the weekend? You didn't like the fact that Dwayne Bratt and I were joking about this vintage. It's not actually a real Rolls Royce, by the way. It's like one of these Rolls Royce body kits, but it's this old limousine It's like, but somebody with a sense of humor, somebody mischievously sent a very opulent and expensive-looking Rolls-Royce-esque limousine to the Carney campaign launch to obviously throw people off. And Dwayne Bratt and I are joking about it. And you said that I was defaming you, Derek. Jeez.
All right. Well, look, I saw the clip, and the way I saw it, and the way quite a few people who sent me that clip immediately after saw it, was you were strongly implying that it was the Western Standard that had sent it. It wasn't said directly so, but you were talking about the limo. Yeah. And you said one of the independent right-wing media sent it. You didn't say which, but you said one of them. Yeah. And then you went immediately to discussion of the Western Standard. Right. About Snell. And I actually appreciated you mentioning that. You were, I think, on the right side of press freedom here. Yes. But it was, I think, strongly implied. So I want to say right now, I wish it was us. It's actually a pretty clever gag. But it's not the way we operate. No. That's activism. I agree. That's activism. That's not journalism. I think it was funny as hell. It is very funny, but it's like, and I think you and I would agree, and here's why I didn't think that it was you guys that sent it, is because Johnny and I were discussing this as well. You can't go send a limousine to create a photo op, and as funny as that may be and as mischievous as that may be, then expect your reporting to be taken seriously, let alone objectively. Like, we can all agree on that. Yeah, I would have no right to object here. Actually, I've received a notification from the Canadian Association of Journalists. They're going to be releasing a statement today, I think, condemning Mark Carney for what he's done here. But I would have no case with the Canadian Association of Journalists or morally to say, yeah, we have a right to be there to fairly cover this event from our perspective if we're also pulling a stunt like that. I think it was a funny stunt, but I want to say right now, I know also some other podcaster in Alberta said it was us or Counter Signal. I can't speak for Counter Signal. I can't speak for any of the other guys. But it was not us. If it was us, you can bet I would have put my logo on it. I probably would have been riding in the back with some champagne. That looked like a good time. Yeah. What's your take on Chrystia Freeland announcing over the weekend as well that she's seeking the leadership? They're kind of the two front runners, I guess you'd call them right now. Obviously, Freeland and Carney, both of them friendly with each other. We were discussing the godparent relationship that Carney has with Freeland's son. What's your take? Obviously, you oppose the federal Liberals inherently, ideologically and otherwise, but your take on this leadership race and the future of that party that for now, is, I guess, just sort of struggling to save a few seats next election. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to cover up the sun coming from behind.
We see it. It's right. Is that your downtown Calgary right now?
Yeah.
We're seeing sunrise in real time.
I do not have a halo of a saint here. It is just the rising sun here. Look, it's going to be Carney or Freeland. It's a bizarrely short leadership race. I remember the very short leadership race in the Wild Rose where we had to select Brian Jean after Danielle Smith had left the party. That was a shotgun leadership race, but it was significantly longer. We actually had 1 week actually after Brian Jean had been elected going into the Alberta 2015 election, but we also didn't control anything there. We weren't the government. Trust me, this is a bad position for them to be in. But it's going to be Freeland or Carney. Then there's Gould, and then there's a MP from Ottawa who doesn't seem to speak either official language. He's just running for profile. I doubt he'll even be on the ballot. See if he can raise the money. But yeah, Freeland's launch. I actually didn't see her whole speech. I did see all of Carney's, but I saw some of hers. And I mean, maybe she is a competent operator, whatever her ideological leanings, but it was a weak performance. She was trying to rile up a crowd, and she just kind of kept on repeating the same thing. Are you ready to fight? We're going to fight. I'm glad you're going to fight. Let's fight. It was just so artificial. It was worse than Carney's. Carney's was not bad, but I think both of them are making a major mistake by trying to be something that they're not. They're trying to. We're in an anti-establishment populist moment right now. The problem is neither of them are anti-establishment populists, and they're trying to be so. They would probably have more. Like neither of them are going to win this election. This is about saving the furniture. And I think they would have a better chance doing that in just being who they really are, not trying to. I mean, if you're going to try and change your whole persona, you're going to need a little more time to make the transition, try and fit into that new skin that you're trying to put on. Carney is an elite. And he said, ordinary people like us. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm actually okay sometimes with an elite. Like Donald Trump is an elite, but he embraces his status as an elite, but an elite outsider, insurgent. Donald Trump doesn't pretend that he does eat at McDonald's, I guess, like poor people. But both of them just seem to be trying to put on a skin that is not them, that they're not comfortable in. I think they'd both be better just saying, you know what, we're accomplished people. Yeah, we might be kind of Toronto elites, but that's not such a bad thing. I think it would just go better. Neither of them are going to win, but they'd have a better chance in saving the furniture than this kind of faux raw populism that just clearly doesn't fit with them.
I guess. I mean, I get the point you're trying to make, but you're kind of respectfully, you're stumbling over trying to decide which elite is palpable to you. I just think I said this on the show late last week. I don't think it's a bad thing that the next, when I say the next Prime Minister of Canada, whoever wins this Liberal leadership race will technically be the Prime Minister of Canada for a short period of time. It could very well be Mark Carney, and then the next Prime Minister of Canada with an actual mandate will very likely be, and most likely be, Pierre Poilievre. But I'm just saying, I don't think it's a bad thing if the next Prime Minister of Canada is Oxford educated, is Harvard educated. I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that we want our politicians to understand not just what the common folk needs. I don't think that we want our politicians to have empathy and insight and be able to understand the journey that the every person is experiencing. But that doesn't mean that they must lack experience in halls of power, that we didn't want them to sit around boardroom tables. We don't want them to understand how business works. Of course we do. I mean, that's one of the criticisms around Pierre Poilievre. Not that it's really going to seem to matter. I mean, I think this will be an absolute landslide, but he doesn't have any real world experience in business, zero.
I'm a fan of people having experience outside of politics before seeking higher office like that. I think that is the biggest knock against Pierre Poilievre. When people say he's a career politician, hasn't done anything outside. I mean, I actually think that's a pretty fair criticism. I think most of the knocks against them are not really hitting, but that one is. But I think people are pissed off enough that they're going to go for it. Having some political experience is good, but I do like the idea that someone's had political experience has experience outside of politics first. But Carney and Freeland, they're elites. I think it's fine, but as long as you put it, they have empathy, they understand the problems of common people, but don't pretend to be. When Carney says regular people like us, like, for God's sakes, that is bullshit. But you can be uncommon, you can be highly accomplished, you can be elite, and then have good solutions for regular people. I think the problem with both of them is they're elites, but perceived by at least folks like myself as not having the interests of the people best at heart. That they're more interested in climate ideology, gender ideology, things like this that are not in 2025 resonating with normal people, if they are elite or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to it. People talking about just kind of that Trudeau legacy that, and I think that, I mean, Carney acknowledged it in his speech last week, where people sort of wonder, like, did the Liberals swing too far left, or did people kind of get exhausted to a certain degree with Trudeau's apologies or some of these initiatives? And Carney says, I'm quoting, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, if you take one thing from this launch, if you remember one thing that I talked about, I think he said, I'm going to be laser focused, or I'm going to be solely focused on the economy and getting the economy back on track. It indicates to me, it signals to me that he recognizes where the Liberals have been losing support and where he thinks he needs to focus on getting some of that support back, or preserving some of that support.
Yeah, that
he obviously
rally was
understands,
opened.
but he understands where his experience lies as well. He's a money guy.
Yeah.
He's got to focus on the money.
Yet the opening of his rally began with a guilt trip land acknowledgement. I mean, I don't, whatever you or your listeners think, a lot of us view that as just a ritual of guilt at things. And a lot of us are just done with it. I was open to those things when they started, but then it just became a ritualistic guilt tripping. And that's how he began it. So, not very, if he's talking about ending the symbolism of woke ideology, for lack of a better term, that was a poor way to do it, because he began his rally with it. And I just don't think that anybody in the current lineup is going to have the credibility to say we are significantly different. This looks a lot like, even though it worked, like here in Alberta, the PCs, the PC premier, their popularity would go to hell. Everyone wants them gone. The PCs would push them out, and they'd bring someone in, and everyone forgave them briefly. They get reelected, and then dump that leader, rinse and repeat. That worked all the way until Jim Prentice. I just don't think any of these people are going to be able to portray themselves as sufficiently having outsider status, the way, say, Danielle Smith did in replacing Jason Kenney, because she was seen very vocally and publicly as an opponent of some of the major policies and decisions that Jason Kenney had. So she had that credibility coming in as an outsider to revive the Alberta UCP's popularity. I don't think that there's been a long and established track record of either Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney openly and severely criticizing any of the major decisions of Justin Trudeau.
What would you like to see Pierre Poilievre doing right now in the context of Canada-U.S. relations?
I mean, the smart thing politically is nothing. Don't do anything. When you're winning, don't change what you're doing. But I think it is the time for him to step up and fill the leadership vacuum. We effectively have no real federal government right now. There's a bureaucracy in place, and it continues to turn, but the political side of the government has no legitimacy. I think it'd be highly politically risky for him to do so. He could be seen, he'll get called traitor by the usual suspects, but I think he should begin talking directly with the Trump administration. I think he needs to step in and say, look, the current clown show that is kind of minding the shop right now is not going to be here. They don't speak for Canada right now. The current federal government, in all likeliness, does not have the confidence of Parliament. It does not have a mandate in an election. That's going to be happening very soon. So before you do anything rash with tariffs and trade wars, wait till we have an election here. I'm a guy you can deal with reasonably. If you have legitimate beefs, I'll be able to deal with that. It is an open question if Trump has, if this is even really about trade, if this is even really about tariffs. That's a fair question. I'm not sure.
And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that Trump gives Poilievre the audience right now. I mean, your opening comment here is about the showmanship, and I agree. But like you've seen some interviews that he's done from Mar-a-Lago over the past few weeks, and he appeared. I mean, it's almost pretending like he doesn't know who Poilievre is. He says, "I don't care about that guy. Maybe he'll win. Maybe he won't. I don't care what he says." It's not as though Trump is sort of like waiting until Pierre Poilievre is the Prime Minister of Canada so they can start unrolling their plan.
Mm-hmm. Again, we don't even know what Trump's real agenda is here. I mean, America has a few legitimate beefs on trade with Canada, but they're not very big ones. Like, things like supply management and dairy. I actually hope the Americans beat the hell of us on negotiations there. I want supply management gone. I want to buy European and American dairy. So I think the Americans are right to complain about us there.
You've got to have
relatively minor.
You and I are both media entrepreneurs. I would imagine, I don't know what your listener base or your donor base looks like, but I imagine you have a lot of people in ag. Supply management you'll get a different. You can have two families that are raising cattle, that are raising cows, and if they're in beef or if they're in dairy, they're going to have very different opinions on supply management. You might risk ruffling a few feathers, no pun intended, with your take on supply management.
I don't care. You should know better that I don't give a shit about.
But why would you like? Is it for you? Is it consumer choice? Is it international market access? Like, what's your argument for folding supply management, which would have billions of dollars in implications?
Consumer choice. I like. I come from a German family. I like buying old cheeses from the old country. Good smelly German cheeses. I like French cheeses. Good imported cheese that we just don't have of the kind here that gets slapped with a tariff of several 100% for the sin of not being made in Canada. Mm-hmm. So it's about consumer choice. I've got 2 young kids. I go through 2 to 3 liters of milk a day. It's an incredible. I go through a ridiculous amount of milk in my house, and I'm just putting some dairy farmer's kid through college because I'm paying for it through supply management. So it's that. So it's about consumer choice. It's about trade. Also, I think it screws Alberta because quota is set by government, and that locks in Quebec's dominance in dairy in Canada. If we had an open market in dairy, it might be tough for the first year or so for Alberta dairy farmers, but I have faith in Alberta's dairy farmers that they'd adapt to it and actually be able to sell more. There's no reason that Alberta should ever be importing milk, or I guess we don't import milk, but certain dairy products from Quebec simply because of quota. So I think it's good for the West to break out of the government-controlled Soviet-style market, and I think it's good for consumers overall. I think the very first thing we should be willing to sacrifice in trade negotiations is the dairy cartel.
Derek, I want to thank you for your time here. We got an email here to talk@ryanjespersen.com while you and I have been talking. So this is sort of hot off the press, so to speak, from Lauren. Lauren says that she has read the Western Standard from time to time and has noticed that you have announced that you proudly do not accept any federal government media subsidy, though you qualify for it. Lauren says, but I have noticed Government of Alberta advertising on Western Standard. How does that not qualify as government subsidy? And what does Derek and his team do to ensure that their editorial principles remain when reporting on Alberta's provincial government?
Well, I'll sell ads to Saudi Arabia if they're going to pay our market rates.
What?
We have If the Saudi Arabians want to buy my advertising space at my rates, well, I might charge them a slight premium because they're jerks, but I'll sell advertising to anyone who will pay our full rates. So look, there's the federal media subsidy program, which gives qualifying Canadian media outlets taxpayers money for simply existing and employing journalists. We qualify for it. We asked for the qualification just as a joke to see if they'd take it, and they did accept us. But then we declined to take any of the money.
Did they tell you what you would? Did they tell you the amount that you would have qualified for?
It's based on formulas, and so it would depend on what your payroll is and your payroll structure year to year. But I'll put it this way: I'd be driving a Rolls-Royce limo right now if I took it.
You decide. I mean, for you, optically, that would be suicide.
Yeah, I'm just against it. I think it's wrong. If nothing else, even if it doesn't influence the media, the perception of influence of media. But look, I'll sell advertising. We don't give our advertising space away for free. We are a major media outlet in Alberta. We employ about a dozen journalists here full time. We have and then many more freelancers. We are one of the biggest media outlets right now in the country. Which and we're not that big. It just largely because the legacy media has declined. We're a pretty significant sized media company at this point. We're occupying most of a floor of a downtown office tower here in downtown Calgary. So yeah, we have advertising space that people want.
So let me ask, but on Lauren's,
I sell it to governments, not-for-profits, and businesses.
Sure, yeah, and people can check out same as us. Like, our revenue streams are from all over the place, and it's a fair question here from Lauren. And how do you maintain your editorial standards or your editorial integrity while selling advertising to government outlets? So give us some insight into that. Like, you're obviously not always the one filing the stories, but like Mr. Snell, your other correspondents, you did differentiate between news and opinion. There's nothing different there. Mainstream newspapers have been offering news and opinion for many years. Rex Murphy on the National would be a broadcast example of that. Mansbridge brings you the news. Rex would bring you, his take, his opinion-fueled take. But how do you maintain that editorial integrity while accepting payment from the government?
Well, we sell our products to the government. We don't take subsidy from the government. But again, we'll sell our advertising space to businesses and to governments. There really is no way for anyone to know when any media outlet has been compromised or not. Except if they're taking the subsidies. So they're paying directly by that is a political decision. Our reporters are under strict instructions to do their jobs. On the news side, they're supposed to do so with as little bias as they possibly can. They're supposed to come at it from a Western lens, an Alberta lens. But they're expected to maintain their independence and their credibility. If ever there's a concern about those things, it's always brought immediately to my attention, and we take action. But we hire good professional journalists on our news side here who know what's expected of them. And at the end of the day, it's a code of ethics, and our people are expected to live up to it. If they don't, they get canned.
Derek Fildebrandt is a former Wild Rose MLA and the founder and publisher of the Western Standard. You can check it out online at westernstandard.news. You can follow Derek on X at @DFildebrandt. It's always nice to bat the ball around with you, Derek, and compare and contrast opinions, and I appreciate that kind of robust nature of our conversations. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, it's fun. Thank you.
All right. So there you have it. The Western Standard. Not responsible for the limousine at the Mark Carney campaign launch. You heard it there directly from Derek Fildebrandt. We're hearing all kinds of rumors on who is responsible for that. I did see in the live chat as we were talking to Derek, and some of you think it's funny and some of you don't think it's funny at all. I would imagine if you were one of the organizers of the Carney campaign launch, you did not find it funny to see a replica Rolls-Royce limousine parked out front, because a lot of people, I even heard it this weekend, somebody came up to me at a restaurant. We were having brunch on Sunday after the Northwest Hawks won gold at Edmonton Minor Hockey Week. Congratulations to all the U11 Hawks and HK 404. But somebody came up to me at the restaurant and said, hey, the restaurant actually not far from where the campaign launch was. They said, did you hear that Mark Carney arrived to his campaign launch in a Rolls-Royce limousine? And I had to sit for a second and make a quick judgment call. Is this person trying to be funny, or are they serious? And it turned out they were serious. They did think that Mark Carney had arrived in a Rolls-Royce limousine. And I said, just for a split second, tell me if you think, if you were running to be the next Prime Minister of Canada and you were treading sort of gently and lightly and carefully through this minefield that is the Trudeau legacy and the drop in popularity and the way that people are feeling about politicians and the affordability crisis, would you arrive to your campaign launch in a limousine, let alone a Rolls-Royce? And they said, I know, it struck me as a little weird. I said, well, then whoever organized it obviously saw a return on that investment. You can let us know what you think about it to talk@ryanjespersen.com. I think it's funny. I roll my eyes at it. I wouldn't think it was funny if I was Mark Carney and that was stealing the show. That's exactly what Dwayne Bratt and I talked about on our Friday episode of Real Talk. That's our most recent episode of Real Talk. You can check it out. Dwayne's take on all of this. This was just a couple of days ago on Friday. Dwayne basically says to us on January 17th, he says, instead of people talking about Carney's message, instead of people talking about his qualifications, instead of people talking about his vision for the Liberal Party and his vision for Canada, they're talking about a Rolls-Royce limousine and a Western Standard correspondent being kicked out by police kind of stole the show to a certain degree. And we haven't even talked yet, really, about Chrystia Freeland's campaign launch. I saw some chatter about it in our live chat. We'll get to that in just a quick second. But first, listen, as I mentioned to Derek, and as is obvious, this show does not happen, period, without the support of amazing partners like the team at North Road Investment Council. You can find them online at northroadic.com. Your wealth deserves specialized attention. North Road Investment Council provides tailored strategies for high net worth individuals, ensuring your financial goals are met with precision and care. You can learn more about their one-of-a-kind digital risk advisory services. Literally nobody else is doing this on their website. North Road Investment Council is a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. You can learn more about connecting with Marshall and Carrie and their team at northroadic.com. At Complete Care Restoration, they understand the huge impact that a natural disaster or other challenging circumstance can have on your home, your business, your personal and professional life. For more than a quarter century, they've been restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. If you're facing water damage, fire damage, sewer backup, or mold issues in your home or business, look no further than Complete Care Restoration. They've got a dedicated team of certified professionals that provide 24/7 emergency services, ensuring that your property is restored quickly and efficiently. And they'll work directly with insurance companies to simplify that claims process for you so you can focus on what matters most. And I was thrilled to hear from a couple of friends of mine just this morning. Kyle and Heather get the shout out. They're going to be joining us at our table at UCAN Comedy Night. They're putting these on. UCAN Youth Services is through the month of March. This is a really, really neat annual tradition of theirs. And the comedy nights go a long way in funding their programs, where they're helping at-risk young adults from 18 to 25 either reconnect with the education pipeline or get plugged into the employment pipeline. The proof of performance is evident. They've got these testimonials. We're going to be sharing one with you this week as part of a Relentless feature. Really, really remarkable work being done by UCAN Youth Services. You can check out their website at ucan.ca, and we'd love to have you join us at the comedy nights, March 10th through 12th and March 17th through 19th at Starlight Casino in the Comic Strip. You can find out all the details at ucancomedy.com. And if you're sitting on something that would be a perfect silent auction item, or maybe you got a little extra cash in your pocket and you're feeling compelled to donate to a nonprofit that's doing amazing work transforming lives, may I humbly suggest UCAN Youth Services. Again, you'll find them online at ucan.ca. Good to see Garth back in the chat today. Garth LaBeach, a great friend of the show, and Garth made his debut on the show late last week talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Garth joining us from his where he works at Heavy Metal Equipment Rentals and Sales. I love the name of the company. And Garth talked to us about why he's not sold on DEI. It was a really, really great interview, and I encourage you to check it out. Garth says, I couldn't stand Chrystia Freeland talking to us like she's feeding me carrot puree with an airplane-shaped spoon. Garth feels like maybe the former Deputy Prime Minister is dumbing it down a little bit. She did launch her campaign for the leadership of the Liberal Party over the weekend. I always wonder about weekend campaign launches. I don't know, but Johnny, I think we have a quick clip from Chrystia Freeland's campaign launch. Why don't we tee that up, and you can let me know if you agree with Garth's assessment of her tone of voice. Here she is. Here's Chrystia Freeland in her own words.
I want to let you in on a little secret. Donald Trump doesn't like me very much.
Canada, we don't like their representative very much.
I'm a tough negotiator. During the first Trump administration, I fought hard to protect Canadian jobs, the Canadian economy, and our way of life. And we won. I left Trudeau's cabinet because I know what we need to do to win that fight again. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies think they can push us around. Trump thinks we're for sale, but he can take what isn't his. I'm not gonna let him. We're a proud country. The true north, strong and free. A country of smart, caring, and hardworking people. A country that gets big things done. A country worth fighting for. But Pierre Poilievre, he'll bow down to Trump and sell us out. This moment matters for all of us. I'm running to be leader of the Liberal Party and our next Prime Minister. I'm in this to fight for you, to fight for Canadians, to fight for Canada. Join me. Join the fight.
And there you have it. She shows her website, ChristiaFreeland.ca, where, of course, they encourage you to donate and sign up and join the mailing list and the like. I don't know. What do you make of the vibe of it? They've got this kind of driving rock and roll behind her. And I actually think, and you and I, John Hicks, technical producer of the show, otherwise known to many, many people as Johnny Infamous.
Good morning, Ryan.
You've been a dynamic radio personality for a lot of years. But what people will notice what people notice about you, and I hope I would say what people notice about me as well, is we are behind a microphone who we are in real life, and that's been a real trend in broadcasting. So the experts in broadcasting will have said for many, many years now, there's no such thing as a radio voice anymore. Just be yourself in front of a mic.
100%.
That's Chrystia Freeland being herself, and so I don't want to be critical of that. Actually, I think that's a very good thing. She's showing some authenticity on the delivery, but it feels mismatched, like the driving rock and roll, and she's talking about being a fighter, but she's delivering it in really kind of like a really sort of almost a chilled out way. It struck me as a little bit strange.
I like how you said that too, because it is like nowadays people try to create a personality online and on the air, and then you go out into public and you can't live up to that. People try to sound smarter than they are because they have AI and Google in front of them when they're on a podcast. But then if you can't do that live on the fly when you're hosting like an event like you do, that's why I don't try to be smarter than I am. I don't try to talk about things that I don't know much about. I try to weigh in on opinion only, right? But back to Freeland, I thought the same thing when I watched this video. I watched it like 5 times over the weekend. And as a producer, I think what happened is she recorded her audio first.
Yeah.
You know, either scripted or she wrote it herself. They made edits and then she did it. And then they added audio after. Whereas normally you would want to sit in a room. I'm sure she has a team that did it. Maybe that's how they did it too. And it just came off. But you want to sit in a room and say, hey, okay, here's some audio. Let's try this one. Talk over top of it. Okay, maybe give us one with a little more angst or whatever. But I agree with you. It was like the audio of just the talking, the did not fit the music bed, right?
Yeah.
But I get what she's trying to go for. And I honestly, and people are going to say whatever, because I have said, you know, I think Freeland is a very long shot for prime minister and, you know, could be the leader of the Liberal Party. But I think the message was okay. I didn't mind the message. I didn't mind what she was saying. It just, the blend wasn't on for me. Right?
Yeah, you've got. I mean, it's interesting. Anything that we're talking about today is going to be in context, contrast, or comparison with the inauguration of Donald Trump, who's one of the great all-time political communicators.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. So is Barack Obama.
And why?
So,
because, like you just said, he doesn't try to be anything else. He's himself all the time, right? Like
to a
that's
fault.
all he is.
To
right?
a fault. But then you've got, as you know, the two front runners at least right now for the Liberal leadership are both very smart and accomplished people, both Ivy League grads. Like their CVs kind of speak for themselves.
I mean, Carney's resume, I looked at it, I was like,
it's pretty wild.
It's like, the thing is like 100 points on it. I mean, to be governor of the Bank of Canada, the only Canadian to be governor of the Bank of Britain, like this is no joke. He's a very intelligent person.
But that's also not necessarily, I mean, as sad as it is, in mainstream politics, it's not always what you've done that resonates most strongly with people, and there could be sort of like a void of personality in a certain way, and I think that might work against Chris. I think Chrystia Freeland has 2 things working against her. Number one, I would just say, like, as a person, she's a proud Albertan. She's accomplished. She's actually she's in person having a conversation with her off camera. She's actually a very nice person. She's very accommodating. She's legitimately curious in what people think. I've seen her in action. I don't know that she is the dynamic personality that the Liberal Party needs to drag it out of this and into the next generation. And I also think that her close affiliation with, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is going to hurt her, whether she likes it or not. And she left. And she resigned from cabinet. But I just think that if you were part of that establishment, I think that you've got that working against you in a big way. And that's probably one of the most obvious things that I'm going to say. One of the most obvious things that I'm going to say all week. I recognize that a lot. And by the way, I just want to give a shout out. I see that Noob and Super Chat Ken and Tony, you're being very generous in our YouTube Super Chat, helping us fill the beer fridge here, and I appreciate that. I see Super Chat Ken says just 208 months to go. I think that's a reference to the Trump presidency, so we'll see. I also saw this interesting note from one of you that referenced the flex to have Derek Fildebrandt on the show after he threatened to sue us. Here's the thing. Derek and I have a long history, and it's actually, we joke around all the time. I thought it was kind of funny over the weekend when he sort of, suggested we should delete our short and suggested it may be defamatory in this, and I just kind of went, man, just come
I
on the
thought it
show
was
like
great.
normal
I was
talk.
like, let's get him on the show.
It is great.
Let's
And
talk to
listen,
him.
number
Yeah.
one, defamation is only defamation if it's not true. We didn't say that the Western Standard sent the limo. He was right. It was implied to the right-wing media outlet.
Well, when you see a
sent
short
it,
that's
and
like a
that's
minute.
true and obvious. But there you have it. Here's how I like to run this show is like if you want to push back on something we say or something you hear on the show, come on the show. That's the whole point. There's not enough talk shows. There's barely any talk shows in Canada or the world that'll hear people out, that'll have dueling opinions and diverse perspectives and challenge the audience and challenge the host. And so I appreciate Derek's availability, and actually I kind of got a kick out of it. I thought it was kind of funny. I understand why some people are pissed off about the limo thing, but for me, it's all, politics, man, this is all gamesmanship. And I said on the record myself, and I stand by it, I think it was a mistake for the Carney campaign to call the cops on those journalists. Some of them are definitely not journalists. I don't think even of the conservative outlets. I don't think they all deserve to be treated in the same way. I don't know James Snell personally, but Derek says he's got a long career. He's been working for mainstream, media, and you can check out his reporting online. And then others, there's some real shitbags, and I don't think that everybody that's there. That's why I asked Derek if he thinks that maybe Mr. Snell was booted or was kicked out because of who was standing next to him or because of who else was there. And I think that that's a very realistic possibility. But I think, you call the cops and people are saying, well, it was a private event. It was a private Liberal Party event. They can do whatever they want. 100% true. 100% true. Just like mixers, election night watch parties, and events that we throw ourselves here at Real Talk. And if demonstrators and protesters show up, you have a choice on how you're going to manage it, how you're going to handle it. Now, it's a little different because we are ourselves a media outlet. And number two, we hire heavy muscle at our events. But I just don't know. I think when you call the cops, you risk handing your opponents a win. And I think that that's what they did in that case. I understand why some people disagree with me.
I think probably their team is looking back now and saying it was whatever, but we also don't know what was going behind the scenes. When like vehicles start to show up unannounced, large vehicles and stuff, I can see how maybe someone said maybe we should call the authorities kind of thing, and then maybe it just kind of escalated. It was a mistake, but I don't think it's outrageous, but I definitely think after now they're like, why did we do that? Because if they hadn't of, we wouldn't be talking about this. We wouldn't have him on the show today. We wouldn't be doing shorts about this limo that, again, we're laughing about it. But at the same time, like when people start doing stuff like this, trying to create a narrative, trying to invent a script, it's not good for anyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Vamp Fashions in the live chat, powered by Park Power, says, if Chrystia Freeland is such a proud Albertan, why is she only here when she needs a bit of credibility? Number one, I don't think that Chrystia Freeland's credibility is dependent on the province of Alberta, respectfully. Number two, she doesn't always get a warm welcome, right? Where was it Grand Prairie, Slave Lake? Where was it? With apologies to our northern communities, we love you guys up there. I love you, but who was it Grand Prairie where the guy just went up one side of her and down the other when she was walking into the elevator? Do you remember that? He dropped, swearing at her and relatively, pretty aggressive as a matter of fact. So she doesn't always get a warm welcome here. If anything, I think that Chrystia Freeland probably undersells her Alberta roots. So does Pierre Poilievre. So did Stephen Harper. I don't think that any of them have really come back to Alberta when they need credibility. I think a lot of people are surprised to learn that Pierre Poilievre grew up in Calgary. I don't think most people know that. I think based on his last name, a French-sounding last name,
East Coast for sure.
He represents an Ottawa riding. I think most people think that Pierre Poilievre is an Eastern Canadian, but of course he is not. We will continue our coverage of the Trump inauguration, and it's not so much the inauguration itself. I know that a lot of you, obviously, you're keen on news and current affairs, and you're going to be watching it. We're wrapping up here basically as it's getting started. Most of you will be listening to this later, but what we will be doing over the next days, weeks, months, years is discussing the impact of that Trump presidency and policy on Canadians, just like you. just like us. That's kind of the whole point. If we missed something in our conversation today, you can always send us a note to talk@ryanjespersen.com, or we love when you leave a comment on our YouTube episodes. The comments, Johnny, one of our episodes last I checked, had about 900 comments on it, which is just amazing. It keeps the conversation going, and we wanted to make sort of a light announcement. This isn't anything major, but we wanted to let you know that the Flamethrower, which comes to you every Friday, or at least the last episode of every week, presented by our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, typically has been fueled. The Flamethrower has been fueled solely by emails to talk@ryanjespersen.com. But as our YouTube footprint is growing, 20,000 plus subscribers now and growing, thank you to everybody that subscribes. We're noticing more and more comments. We try to reply to as many of the comments as we can. We can't get to all of them.
Impossible.
I'm kind of taking it, but we're doing our best. And when you get a reply to the comment, we leave our initials so you know who it is that's replying. When we see one that's a great fit for the Flamethrower, we're starting to copy paste those into a doc. So I believe that future episodes, future editions of the Flamethrower will be a nice mix of social media feedback, YouTube feedback, and emails.
And not just that, because we're so widespread now. Like today, thank you to Michael. He looks like he may know you, Ryan, but he said, thank you that you're on Facebook now.
What's his last name?
Michael.
Was it Sherbin?
Again,
Michael
Sherbin.
I saw that.
So he said, I'm in BC. I'm on Facebook mostly. It's great to see here. But what I was going to say is that maybe we'll get a DM on one of our social media. It doesn't matter. We're just going to look for, because we get long comments that are basically email rants anyways. We get DMs all the time. So no matter where you hit us now, we may just turn one of those into a Flamethrower.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda says, with due respect, Pierre Poilievre has spent much of his life or more in Ontario as he has in Alberta. Sure. I mean, I don't think that we need to argue about this or debate it. I'm just saying he's from Calgary. He grew up in Calgary, went to high school with my brother. So when he was named Jeff Poilievre,
he's got a pair of boots.
And he's, and now, I mean, I mean, everybody knows, I mean, people talking about pensions, Pierre Poilievre, it's not his own fault. I mean, he was elected as a young MP. So was Jason Kenney. Pierre Poilievre qualified for his full pension by age 31. So, I mean, it's kind of comical when he talks about, people living high on the hog. It's not his fault that he's been a successful politician. It's not his fault that he has an official residence to live in with a staff and a chef and a driver and everything else. But take everything in context, right? I mean, Derek, I kind of thought it was funny. And Derek kind of, I won't say painted himself in a corner, but he's talking a little bit about Trump. And he goes, well, Trump's also an elite, but it's not, he's only kind of, we're picking and choosing which elites we're okay with and which ones we're not. Listen, there are no federal political leaders. There are no prime ministers in waiting. There are no presidents of the United States that are not elite, that are not part of the machine, that are not swimming in the swamp. They're all there in it together. The question is, who do you find to be sincere, and who ticks the boxes for you? What political party leader, or what federal leader for that matter, what government leader do you think reflects the values that you hold and is looking out for the best interests of the jurisdiction of which they are in charge? I mean, some of you will believe that Danielle Smith is doing exactly what she should be doing this weekend. Others of you are outraged that she's down there. Some of you think that Pierre Poilievre should be requesting meetings with Donald Trump. Some of you think that he should know his role and wait till he's prime minister to do so. Basically, what we're interested in is vociferous and meaningful debate of these issues. We also recognize that in real life, sometimes you just need something positive to focus on. And that's why the first episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy, you can get a free solar quote today at kuby.ca. We bring you positive reflections. And I absolutely love this one from Brittany, who wrote into the show, and she said, Jespo, I think that this story would make a really, really good positive reflection. Brittany, you are absolutely right. She says, with so many opinions, so many struggles faced, and so much stigma around homelessness, I think it's always really important to find examples to remember that Albertans who are experiencing houselessness are still Albertans. They're still people. They're still our neighbors. And with many of them being former military or veterans, first responders, they're still heroes. Brittany said when there was an explosion in Red Deer a short time ago, right near the beginning of January, she says 5 employees were injured at a bus depot. I hadn't even heard of this story, John. I'm so grateful that Brittany put it on our radar. She says the first people to rush into the building after that explosion were 8 people who are houseless. They're clients of what's known as the Safe Harbor Society. She says they have nothing, but that didn't stop them from helping others. Check out this news report by Wallace Snowden. I'll give Wallace credit from the CBC. Brittany says, but from being humans who respond to harm to other humans, and then they do whatever they can to help. Brittany says, we are all here on this spinning rock. We're all here sharing this space. We're living, eating, sleeping, struggling. Some of us struggling more than others for sure. But for people who have nothing to give but their hands to help people injured in emergency, I only have one thing to say. Thank you so much for being there when people were hurting, and I am so grateful that you are in this world. Brittany signs off by saying, thank you, Jespo. Thank you, Johnny, for everything you do on Real Talk. I listen almost every morning. Brittany, thank you so much. She says, and I sure enjoyed the conversation in the YouTube chat. I'm wondering if she wants me to share her handle, because then we reveal her real name. She signs off. I think it's okay. She's Ms. B in the chat. We've read her comments before. Ms. B says she enjoys the show. We sure enjoyed hearing from you, and thanks for putting this important story on our radar. You are absolutely correct. If you're in Red Deer right now, why not consider, or anywhere across the province or across the country, supporting the Safe Harbor Society? And remember Brittany's message next time you see somebody down on their luck. Positive Reflections is proudly presented by Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today at kuby.ca, and they're hiring. You can check out the careers link on their website. Coming up on Tuesday's Real Talk, we'll have comprehensive analysis, as you would expect, of course, of the inauguration of President Donald Trump. We're also working on interviews with Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and covering other news of the day as it breaks. Be good to each other today, and thanks for supporting Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.